The wire cutters slipped from Beatrice Zimmerman's calloused hands and clattered against the rocky ground as she spotted the blood trail leading away from the broken fence line. And her heart hammered against her ribs, because blood in Nevada territory meant trouble in 1878. She wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, squinting against the harsh afternoon sun that beat down on the scrubland outside Yerington, Nevada. The fence she had been repairing for the Henderson ranch stretched before her in both directions, posts weathered gray from wind and sand. But now her attention fixed on those dark drops staining the pale earth, leading toward a cluster of rocks about 50 yards distant. Beatrice hesitated only a moment before retrieving her wire cutters and the small revolver she kept in her tool belt. At 22 years old, she had learned to be cautious in this unforgiving landscape. She had been mending fences for 3 years now, ever since she had fled Colorado and the shattered remains of her engagement to Thomas Wheeler. The memory still stung like alkali dust in an open wound. He had promised her everything and delivered nothing but heartache when she discovered him in the arms of her cousin Rebecca just 2 weeks before their wedding. She had left everything behind, sold her mother's silver hairbrush and cameo brooch to afford passage west, and found herself in Yerington with nothing but determination and a willingness to work. The local ranchers had been skeptical at first when she offered her services. A woman fence mender was unusual, perhaps unheard of in these parts, but Beatrice had proved herself capable. Her father had been a farmer back in Illinois before consumption took him when she was 16. He had taught her how to work with her hands, how to repair what was broken, how to make things sturdy and lasting. The irony was not lost on her that she could mend fences, but had failed to repair her own broken heart. The blood trail grew thicker as she approached the rocks, and she heard a low groan that made her grip the revolver tighter. She rounded the largest boulder and froze. A man lay propped against the stone, his face pale beneath the tan of someone who spent his life outdoors. His shirt was torn and soaked with blood from a wound in his left shoulder. His hat had fallen beside him, revealing dark brown hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. Even in his obvious pain, she could see he was young, probably close to her own age, with strong features and a square jaw covered in a day's worth of stubble. His eyes opened as she approached, and they were the color of summer storm clouds, gray and intense. His right hand moved toward the gun at his hip, but the movement was weak and uncoordinated. "Easy," Beatrice said, holding up her free hand while keeping her own weapon trained on him. "I am not here to hurt you. What happened?" The man's eyes focused on her with difficulty. "Rustlers," he managed, his voice rough with pain. "Tried to stop them from cutting Henderson's cattle, 3 of them. Got away with maybe 20 head. One of them shot me before they rode off." He coughed and a tremor ran through him. "Name is Austin Kane. I work for Henderson, foreman." Beatrice's mind raced. She had heard Austin Kane's name mentioned at the ranch house when she collected payment for her work, but she had never met him. He managed Henderson's cattle operation and spent most of his time on the range with the hands. She holstered her revolver and knelt beside him, examining the wound with practiced efficiency. "The bullet went through," she said, relief evident in her voice. "That is good. But you have lost considerable blood and this needs proper cleaning or infection will set in." Austin tried to push himself up. "Need to get back to the ranch. Report the theft." "You will not make it 10 feet in your condition," Beatrice said firmly. She stood and scanned the area, calculating distances. Her wagon was parked about a quarter-mile away where she had been working on the fence. The main ranch house was 3 miles beyond that. "Can you ride if I bring my wagon here?" "I can ride," Austin said, but the way his words slurred told a different story. "I will return shortly. Do not die while I am gone." Despite his pain, Austin's mouth twitched. "Yes, madam." Beatrice ran back to her wagon, her long skirt catching on the brush as she hurried. She had learned to dress practically for her work, choosing sturdy brown cotton that could withstand the rigors of fence mending, but she still cursed the restrictions of proper feminine attire as she ran. Her wagon was a simple affair, purchased third-hand with her first 6 months' earnings. The 2 mules that pulled it were steady if not particularly fast. She climbed onto the seat and urged them toward the rocks where Austin lay. By the time she reached him, his eyes had closed again and fear clutched at her chest. But when she touched his good shoulder, he opened his eyes and focused on her face with visible effort. "Still here," he murmured. "Can you stand if I help you?" Together they managed to get him upright, though he swayed dangerously and leaned heavily on her smaller frame. Beatrice was strong from her work, but Austin was tall and solidly built, easily 6 feet to her 5.5. She half dragged, half guided him to the wagon bed, where he collapsed with a grunt of pain. She drove as quickly as she dared over the rough ground, trying to avoid the worst of the ruts and rocks that might jostle him unnecessarily. Austin remained conscious but silent in the back, his breathing labored. The sun had begun its descent toward the western mountains by the time the Henderson ranch house came into view. The ranch was one of the more prosperous in the area, with a 2-story house painted white, several barns, a bunkhouse for the hands, and various outbuildings. Chickens scattered as Beatrice drove into the yard, calling out for help. Several ranch hands emerged from the barn, and a woman appeared on the porch of the main house. Mrs. Henderson was in her 50s, gray-haired and capable, the kind of woman who had helped build this ranch from nothing alongside her husband. "That is Austin's wagon," one of the hands shouted, recognizing the rig. Then he saw Austin in the back and his expression changed. "Boss, Kane is hurt." Everything became a flurry of activity. The men lifted Austin carefully from the wagon while Mrs. Henderson shouted instructions. They carried him into the house and up the stairs to one of the guest bedrooms. Mrs. Henderson sent one of the younger hands racing to town to fetch the doctor, then turned to Beatrice. "What happened?" Beatrice explained while Mrs. Henderson began cutting away Austin's bloody shirt and examining the wound with experienced hands. The older woman had clearly tended injuries before, another necessity of ranch life where the nearest doctor was an hour away on a good day. "Rustlers, then," Mrs. Henderson said grimly. "My husband is in Carson City on business. He will want to know about this immediately." She looked at Beatrice with new appraisal. "You brought him in. Probably saved his life. These wounds can turn bad quickly in this heat." Beatrice felt uncomfortable with the praise. "Anyone would have done the same, perhaps, but you are the one who did it." Mrs. Henderson began cleaning the wound with water from a basin one of the hands had brought. Austin was semi-conscious now, drifting in and out of awareness. "I will need help holding him still. This will hurt." Beatrice moved to the other side of the bed and helped pin Austin's shoulders as Mrs. Henderson poured whiskey into the wound. Austin jerked and cried out, his eyes flying open, but Beatrice held firm. "I know it hurts," she said quietly, her face close to his, "but this must be done." His gray eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment the pain seemed to recede. Then Mrs. Henderson poured more whiskey and his body tensed again, muscles rigid beneath Beatrice's hands. When it was done, he slumped back against the pillows, breathing hard. The doctor arrived as the last light was fading from the sky. Dr. Morrison was an elderly man with steady hands and a brisk manner. He examined Austin's wound, nodded approval at Mrs. Henderson's work, and applied a proper bandage. He left powders for pain and instructions for preventing infection, collected his fee, and departed with the promise to return in 2 days to check on the patient. "You should stay for supper," Mrs. Henderson said to Beatrice as they descended the stairs. "It is too late for you to be traveling alone." Beatrice wanted to refuse, uncomfortable with the idea of imposing, but her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. She had eaten nothing since dawn except some jerky and hardtack. Mrs. Henderson's smile was knowing. "Come now. It is the least we can do." Supper was served in the large kitchen where the ranch hands ate. The men were curious about Austin's condition and angry about the rustlers. Talk turned to organizing a posse to track the thieves, but without Austin to lead them and with Mr. Henderson in Carson City, the discussion went nowhere. Beatrice ate her stew and cornbread quietly, listening to the men's rough voices and feeling like an outsider to their world. After the meal, Mrs. Henderson insisted Beatrice check on Austin before departing. "He asked about you earlier when the doctor was here. Wanted to know if you had left yet." Beatrice felt her cheeks warm for no reason she could identify. She climbed the stairs and knocked softly on the guest room door before entering. Austin was awake, propped on pillows, his shoulder wrapped in clean white bandages. His color was better, though he still looked drawn and tired. "Heard you were leaving," he said when she approached the bed. "I need to return to town. I am staying at the boarding house there." "You live in Yerington proper then?" "Not on a ranch. I go where the work is. I have contracts with several ranches for fence repair and maintenance. Henderson's is one of them." Austin studied her with those gray eyes, and she felt an uncomfortable sensation under his scrutiny. "I have heard about you, the woman fence mender. Some of the boys thought it was peculiar at first, but Henderson says you do good work." "I do," Beatrice said simply. There was no arrogance in the statement, just fact. "I owe you my life." "You owe me nothing. I did what any decent person would do. Still, I am in your debt, Miss Zimmerman, Beatrice Zimmerman." "Miss Zimmerman, then. I hope I have the opportunity to repay your kindness." Something in his tone made her look away, suddenly flustered. "Just focus on healing, Mr. Kane. Mrs. Henderson needs her foreman healthy." She left before he could respond, hurrying down the stairs and out to her wagon. The night was cool and clear. Stars scattered across the black sky like spilled salt. The ride back to Yerington took over an hour, and by the time she reached the boarding house where she rented a small room, exhaustion had settled into her bones. Mrs. Cooper, who ran the boarding house, was waiting up, her curiosity evident. "Heard there was trouble at the Henderson place. You were there." News traveled fast in a small town. Beatrice gave her the briefest account before climbing the stairs to her room. She washed her face and hands in the basin, changed into her nightdress, and fell into bed. But sleep would not come. Her mind kept returning to the image of Austin Kane lying bleeding against those rocks, and then to the intensity in his gray eyes as he looked at her from his sick. She told herself it meant nothing. She had learned her lesson about men and their promises. Thomas Wheeler had taught her well that a handsome face and sweet words meant nothing when weighed against true character. She would not make that mistake again. The next morning, Beatrice collected her tools and set out for the Miller Ranch on the northern edge of Yerington. She had promised to repair a section of their fence line that had been damaged during a recent windstorm. The work was straightforward, and she lost herself in the familiar rhythm of measuring, cutting, and stretching wire. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, and the physical labor helped quiet her restless thoughts. But over the following days, she found herself thinking often of Austin Kane. She told herself she was simply concerned for his recovery, as any compassionate person would be. Yet when she drove out to the Henderson Ranch a week later to complete the fence repair she had abandoned the day of the shooting, Her heart beat faster as the ranch buildings came into view. She saw Austin before she reached her original work site. He was standing near the barn, his left arm in a sling, talking with two of the ranch hands. He spotted her wagon and raised his good hand in greeting. Against her better judgment, Beatrice pulled the mules to a stop. "Mr. Kane, you should be resting. Doctor said gentle movement is good for it now, keeps it from going stiff." He walked closer and she could see he moved carefully, favoring his injured side. "I hoped I might see you again. I came to finish the fence work I left undone." "Of course." Was that disappointment in his eyes? "The section near where you found me." "Yes. It should not take long. Mind if I ride along? I need to inspect the area anyway, see if those rustlers left any other traces." Beatrice wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to keep her distance from this man who made her feel things she had sworn never to feel again. But she could think of no reasonable objection. "If you wish." Austin climbed onto the wagon seat beside her with some difficulty, his jaw tight with suppressed pain. Once settled, he exhaled slowly. "Mrs. Henderson would skin me if she knew I came out here," he admitted. "Then perhaps you should not have." "Probably not." He glanced at her, and there was something warm in his expression that made her grip the reins tighter. "But I find I am not always sensible." They rode in silence for a while, the mules plodding steadily over the rough ground. Beatrice was acutely aware of Austin's presence beside her, the solid warmth of him, the faint scent of soap and leather. She focused on the horizon, on the distant mountains, on anything but the man next to her. "Can I ask you something?" Austin said finally. "I suppose. What makes a woman choose to mend fences for a living? It is not common work for a lady." Beatrice stiffened. "I am not a lady. I am a working woman who makes her own way. And I chose this work because I am good at it and it pays honestly." "I did not mean to offend you." She relented slightly. "I needed work when I came to Yarrington. I had some experience with fence building from my father's farm. The ranchers here needed someone who could do reliable repairs without them having to pull their hands off other duties. It was practical." "You came from somewhere else then?" "Colorado. Before that, Illinois. Family? None living." It was true enough. Her mother had died when she was young, her father when she was 16. She had an aunt in Denver and the cousin who had betrayed her, but they were dead to her now. Austin seemed to sense there was more to the story but did not press. "I am from Texas originally. Came up here 5 years ago when Henderson was expanding his operation. Worked my way up from a regular hand to foreman." They reached the site of the broken fence, and Beatrice set to work. Austin walked the area slowly, examining the ground where the rustlers had cut the wire and driven the stolen cattle through. He found tracks but nothing useful after a week of wind and weather. As Beatrice worked, Austin watched her with undisguised interest. She tried to ignore him, but awareness prickled along her skin. Finally, she could stand it no longer. "Is something wrong, Mr. Kane?" "Austin. Please call me Austin." "Is something wrong, Austin?" "Not wrong, just interesting." "What is interesting?" "You, the way you work. The confidence in your movements. Most women I have known would be frightened out here alone. I carry a gun and know how to use it, and being frightened accomplishes nothing." "True enough." He was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something else?" Beatrice sighed. "You seem determined to ask questions regardless of my answer." He smiled, and she was struck by how it transformed his face, warming those cool gray eyes. "Fair point, but I will ask anyway. Would you allow me to take you to supper sometime?" A proper supper in town, not ranch food in a kitchen full of dusty cowboys. Her hand stilled on the wire. This was what she had feared, what she had known was coming. She should refuse immediately, should make it clear she had no interest in whatever he was offering. but the words caught in her throat. "I do not think that would be wise," she said finally. "Why not?" "Because I am not interested in courting, Mr. Kane, Austin. I have my work and my independence. That is enough. One supper does not mean courting, it just means supper." Nothing is ever that simple. It could be. Beatrice secured the last section of wire and turned to face him directly. "I was engaged once. He proved to be a liar and a cheat. I have no desire to repeat the experience." Austin's expression softened. "I am sorry someone hurt you. But not all men are liars and cheats." "Perhaps not. But I have no way to know which kind you are, and I have no interest in finding out. I prefer to rely on myself." She gathered her tools and climbed back onto the wagon seat. Austin followed, moving more slowly. The ride back to the ranch yard was quiet, the easy atmosphere from before replaced with tension. When they arrived, Austin climbed down carefully. "Thank you for allowing me to come along," he said formally. "You are welcome." He hesitated, as if he wanted to say more, but finally just nodded and walked away. Beatrice collected her payment from Mrs. Henderson and drove back to town, telling herself she felt relieved. She had done the right thing. She had protected herself from potential heartache. So why did she feel so miserable? The weeks that followed fell into a familiar pattern. Beatrice worked from dawn to dusk, traveling between ranches, repairing fences damaged by whether animals or time. The work was hard and honest, and she took pride in it. Her reputation grew, and she found herself with more contracts than she could easily fulfill. She hired 2 young men from town to help with the heavier work, and her small business thrived. She did not see Austin Kane again during that time, though she heard news of him. The rustlers had not been caught, but there had been no more incidents. Henderson had returned from Carson City and had apparently praised Austin's actions despite his injury. There was talk that Austin might eventually buy his own spread once he saved enough money. Beatrice told herself she did not care about any of it. She told herself she never thought about those gray eyes or that warm smile. She told herself that the hollow feeling in her chest had nothing to do with a certain cowboy foreman. She was lying to herself, and she knew it. It was early October when everything changed. Beatrice had been working on a fence line for the Wilson Ranch, about 2 miles from the Henderson property. The autumn air was cool and pleasant after the brutal summer heat, and she was making good progress. She had sent her helpers back to town with 1 wagon while she finished the last section with the other. She heard the riders approaching and looked up to see 4 men on horseback. Something about the way they sat their saddles, the way they looked at her, made her hand drift toward the revolver at her waist. The men stopped their horses about 20 feet away, and the leader, a scarred man with a tobacco-stained beard, offered a smile that did not reach his cold eyes. "Well now, what do we have here? A woman all alone fixing fences." "I am on private property," Beatrice said, keeping her voice steady, "and I am busy. Move along." "Not very friendly, is she, boys?" The other men laughed. "We are just being neighborly, looking for work, actually. Thought maybe you could use some help." "I have all the help I need." The leader's false smile faded. "That is not very charitable. We have ridden a long way." Beatrice recognized the threat in his tone and pulled her revolver, cocking the hammer. "And you can ride a long way further. This is your only warning." The tension ratcheted up instantly. The 4 men spread out slightly, hands moving toward their own weapons. Beatrice's heart hammered, but she kept her gun steady. She was a decent shot, but she could not take all 4 of them. "You have spirit, girl. I like that." The leader started to dismount. The gunshot that cracked across the valley did not come from Beatrice's gun. One of the men yelped and grabbed his arm, blood welling between his fingers. The others spun their horses, looking for the source of the shot. Austin Kane rode toward them from the direction of the Henderson ranch, his rifle still raised. His left arm was no longer in a sling, though Beatrice could see he held that side carefully. Two more Henderson ranch hands rode behind him, both armed. "This is Henderson property," Austin called, his voice carrying clearly. "And that woman is under our protection. I suggest you move on before someone gets hurt worse than a grazed arm." The scarred leader's face darkened with anger, but he was not stupid enough to start a gunfight when outnumbered. "This is not over." "Yes, it is," Austin said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Ride out. If I see any of you in this valley again, I will assume you are the rustlers who have been plaguing us and act accordingly." The four men wheeled their horses and galloped away, the wounded one cursing and clutching his bleeding arm. Austin and the ranch hands watched until they disappeared over a ridge. Then Austin rode to where Beatrice stood, her revolver still in her trembling hand. "Are you hurt?" His voice was gentle now, concerned. "No, I am fine." She holstered her gun, surprised to see her hands shaking. The delayed reaction was setting in, her body responding to the danger now that it had passed. Austin dismounted and handed his reins to one of the ranch hands. "Scout the area. Make sure those men are really leaving." The hands rode off, and Austin turned back to Beatrice. "You are not fine. You are shaking." "I said I am fine." But her voice broke on the last word, betraying her. Austin stepped closer, and then his arms were around her, careful of his healing shoulder, pulling her against his chest. Beatrice stiffened, wanting to pull away, wanting to maintain the walls she had built. But the warmth and solidity of him, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, broke something inside her. She leaned into him and let him hold her while the trembling slowly subsided. "How did you know I was here?" she asked finally, her voice muffled against his shirt. "I have been keeping track of where you work, making sure you are safe." She pulled back to look at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because those rustlers are still out there. Because this is dangerous country. Because I care what happens to you." His gray eyes were intense, holding hers. "Because I have not stopped thinking about you since the day you saved my life." "Austin, I told you I am not interested in courting." "I know what you told me. I also know that you are lying to yourself." His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin with infinite gentleness. "You feel this between us. I know you do." Beatrice wanted to deny it, but the words would not come, because he was right. She did feel it, had felt it from the first moment she looked into his eyes. It terrified her. "I cannot," she whispered. "I cannot go through that pain again. I am not Thomas Wheeler or whatever his name was. I will not hurt you, Beatrice. You cannot promise that." "No, I cannot. But I can promise to try with everything I have to be worthy of you. To be honest with you, to protect you and cherish you and do my damnedest to make you happy." His forehead touched hers. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am just asking for a chance. One supper. One conversation. One opportunity to show you that not all men are like the one who broke your heart." Beatrice closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his breath on her face, the solid strength of him so close. Every logical thought told her to refuse, to protect herself, to run before she got hurt again. But her heart, that traitorous organ she thought she had locked away, was screaming something different. "One supper," she heard herself say. "Just supper." She felt his smile against her temple. "Just supper, I promise." The ranch hands returned to report the four men had truly left the area, riding hard toward the east. Austin sent one of them to inform the local law in Yarrington about the incident, though he held little hope anything would come of it. Men like that were drifters, here today and gone tomorrow. Still, it was worth reporting. Austin insisted on escorting Beatrice back to town personally. She protested that it was not necessary, that she had made this journey alone dozens of times, but he was immovable on the subject. Finally, she relented, too tired from the day's events to argue further. They rode side by side, her wagon and his horse, talking easily now that some barrier between them had fallen. Austin told her about growing up in Texas, the youngest of 4 boys on a struggling ranch. His father had been a hard man, quick with his fists and stingy with affection. Austin had left home at 17, determined to make his own way. He had worked ranches from Texas to Montana before settling in Nevada. "I want my own place someday," he said, his eyes on the horizon. "Not a big operation like Henderson's, but something solid. A few hundred head, good grazing land, a house that will not blow away in the first strong wind, maybe a family to fill it." "That sounds like a good dream," Beatrice said softly. "What about you? Do you plan to mend fences forever?" She had never really thought beyond the immediate need to survive, to stay busy, to avoid the pain that lurked in stillness. "I do not know. I have not planned that far ahead. Maybe you should start." When they reached Yarrington, Austin insisted on seeing her safely to the boarding house. "Mrs. Cooper appeared in the doorway, her eyes sharp with curiosity as she took in Austin's presence. Beatrice could already imagine the gossip that would spread through town. "Tomorrow evening?" Austin asked before he left. "There is a decent restaurant on Main Street, the Silver Dollar. They serve actual beefsteak, not jerky." "Tomorrow evening," Beatrice agreed, feeling her stomach flutter with something that might have been anticipation or terror or both. Austin smiled that warm smile that made her heart skip. "I will call for you at 6. She watched him ride away, then turned to find Mrs. Cooper practically vibrating with questions. Beatrice held up a hand. "Not tonight, Mrs. Cooper. I am exhausted." But as she lay in bed that night, sleep eluded her once again. She had agreed to supper with Austin Kane. She had let him hold her. She had allowed the smallest crack to form in the protective walls around her heart. It felt dangerous and reckless and terrifying. It also felt right in a way nothing had felt in 3 years. The next day dragged interminably. Beatrice tried to focus on paperwork, on organizing her schedule, on anything to keep busy. But her mind kept wandering to the evening ahead. She changed her dress 3 times before finally settling on her best one, a dark blue cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. It was far from fancy, but it was clean and pressed and made her eyes look bright. Mrs. Cooper insisted on arranging her hair, pinning it up in a soft style that was more becoming than the tight bun Beatrice usually wore for work. When she looked at herself in the small mirror in her room, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked young and almost pretty, and the realization both pleased and frightened her. Austin arrived precisely at 6, wearing clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his dark hair still damp from washing. He held his hat in his hands and his eyes widened when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look nice as well." They walked to the Silver Dollar restaurant, a respectable establishment owned by a German couple who served the best food in Yarrington. Austin held doors for her, pulled out her chair, treated her with a courtly respect that made her feel valued in a way she had not experienced before. Even Thomas, during their engagement, had never been quite this attentive. Over thick steaks and potatoes, they talked. Austin asked about her work, genuinely interested in the details of fence construction and repair. He listened when she talked about the satisfaction of fixing something broken, of making it strong and functional again. "Is that why you chose this work?" he asked. "Because you like fixing broken things?" Beatrice paused, a forkful of potato halfway to her mouth. She had never articulated it quite that way before, but there was truth in it. Perhaps There is something satisfying about taking something damaged and making it whole again. Can hearts be mended like fences? She met his eyes. I do not know. Fences are simple. Hearts are complicated. But both can be repaired if someone cares enough to do the work. Or both can break again under the wrong pressure. Austin reached across the table and took her hand. I am not going to pressure you, Beatrice. I want you to trust me, but I know that takes time. I am willing to wait. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. Why me? There are other women in Yarrington, prettier women, women who do not come with broken pieces. Everyone has broken pieces. The question is whether you are brave enough to let someone help you mend them. He smiled. And for what it is worth, I think you are the prettiest woman I have ever seen. Especially when you are elbow-deep in fence wire, sweating in the sun, determined to get the job done right. Despite herself, Beatrice laughed. It felt good, that release of tension. You have odd taste in women, Austin Kane. Maybe, but my taste is excellent in my opinion. After dinner, they walked through the darkening streets of Yarrington. The town was small, just one main street with various shops and businesses, but it felt almost romantic in the lamplight. Austin talked about his plans for the future, his hopes of buying land north of town where there was good water and grass. Henderson has said he would sell me some cattle on credit once I am ready. Help me get started. He is a good man to work for. He is lucky to have you. I hope so. I work hard for him, but I do not want to be someone's foreman forever. I want something that is mine. They reached the boarding house too soon. Beatrice felt a pang of disappointment that the evening was ending. Austin walked her to the door, then stood awkwardly, clearly wanting to do something but uncertain what was appropriate. Thank you for supper, Beatrice said. It was lovely. Can I see you again, not just for supper but maybe on Sunday? There is a nice spot by the river where people sometimes picnic. I would like that. Austin's face lit up. Really, really. He took her hand and raised it to his lips, kissing her knuckles with old-fashioned courtesy. Sunday then, I will bring the food. Beatrice went inside feeling as if she were floating. Mrs. Cooper was waiting, of course, but for once Beatrice did not mind the questions. She gave the older woman a brief account of the evening, then climbed to her room where she lay on her bed and replayed every moment, every word, every smile. Maybe, just maybe, she could risk her heart one more time. Sunday dawned clear and warm, one of those perfect autumn days that made Nevada territory bearable. Beatrice wore her blue dress again, having nothing better, and met Austin at the boarding house. He had borrowed a buggy from Henderson and packed a basket full of fried chicken, biscuits, cheese, apples, and even a small cake that Mrs. Henderson had contributed. The river Austin had mentioned was really more of a creek, but it was a pleasant spot about a mile from town where cottonwood trees provided shade and the water burbled over smooth rocks. They spread a blanket and sat together, eating and talking and watching the water flow past. Austin told her more about his family, the complicated relationship with his father who had never thought any of his sons quite measured up. He died 2 years ago, fell from a horse and broke his neck. I felt like I should be sadder than I was. But mostly I just felt relieved that I would never have to hear him tell me I was worthless again. That must have been hard, growing up like that. It made me determined to be different. When I have children someday, I want them to know they are loved, every day, without question. You will be a good father, Beatrice said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I hope so. He looked at her. What about you? Do you want children? I have not let myself think about it. When Thomas and I were engaged, we talked about having a family. After he betrayed me, I put those dreams away. Maybe it is time to take them out again. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the creek and the wind in the cottonwoods. Then Austin said, Tell me about him, about Thomas. What did he do to hurt you so badly?" Beatrice had never told anyone the full story. She had kept it locked inside, a private shame. But something about this moment, about Austin's steady presence, made her want to share it. We grew up in the same town in Colorado. He was charming and handsome, and when he asked to court me, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. He said all the right things, made all the right promises. We were engaged for 6 months. She paused, gathering her courage to continue. My cousin Rebecca came to visit from Denver. She was beautiful and sophisticated, everything I was not. I thought she was my friend. I trusted her. And Thomas. I came home early from a church meeting one afternoon, found them together in my father's parlor. They did not even hear me come in, they were so wrapped up in each other. The memory still stung, even now. When they finally noticed me, Thomas said it was my fault, that I was too serious, too practical, not exciting enough. Rebecca said she was sorry, but clearly Thomas had made his choice. Austin's hand found hers, gripping tight. They were fools, both of them. I left the next day, sold everything I could, took what little money I had saved, and came west. I wanted to go somewhere no one knew me, where I could start over. And you chose to mend fences. I chose to be independent, to never rely on anyone who could betray me again. Austin turned to face her fully. "Beatrice, look at me." She met his gray eyes, seeing the intensity there. "I am not going to betray you. I am not going to find you lacking or boring or too serious. I think you are remarkable, strong and capable and beautiful and genuine. Thomas Wheeler was a fool who did not deserve you. But his loss is my gain, because if he had been the man he should have been, you would never have come to Yarrington, and I would never have met you. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you saved my life. I know you work harder than most men I have met. I know you are brave and honest, and you do not suffer fools. I know that when you smile, my whole day gets brighter. And I know that I am falling in love with you, Beatrice Zimmerman, and I do not want to fight it anymore." Beatrice's breath caught. "Austin, you cannot just say things like that." "Why not? It is true. We have known each other for 6 weeks. Some things do not need time, some things you just know." He cupped her face with both hands. "I knew the moment I opened my eyes and saw you standing over me with that revolver in your hand. I knew you were going to change my life." Tears pricked at Beatrice's eyes. "I am scared. I know, but being scared does not mean you have to be alone." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, asking rather than demanding. Beatrice stiffened for just a moment, old fears rising up. Then she let herself soften into it, let herself feel the warmth and tenderness he was offering. His lips were gentle against hers, and the kiss tasted like apples and possibility. When they parted, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "I meant what I said. I love you. You do not have to say it back, not until you are ready." "I do not know if I can say it, not yet." "That is all right. I can wait." They spent the rest of the afternoon by the creek, talking and laughing and occasionally kissing. It felt natural and right, as if they had been doing this for years instead of weeks. When the sun began to set and they packed up to head back to town, Beatrice felt lighter than she had in 3 years. Maybe, just maybe, her heart could heal after all. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Beatrice's life. She and Austin spent every free moment together. He would ride out to wherever she was working and bring her lunch, staying to talk while she ate. On Sundays, they would go on long rides through the surrounding country, exploring the hills and valleys, imagining where his future ranch might be. Austin kissed her often now, and Beatrice found herself craving those moments, the warmth and security of his arms around her. He was patient and respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. It made her trust him in a way she had not thought possible. Mrs. Henderson noticed the relationship developing and gave her approval in her own practical way. That boy has been waiting for the right woman. I think he found her. The other ranchers Beatrice worked for teased her good-naturedly about her cowboy, but there was no meanness in it. She had proved herself over the past 3 years, and they respected her work. If she wanted to court Austin Kane, that was her business. It was early November when Austin took her to see the land he wanted to buy. It was about 5 miles north of Yarrington, a beautiful valley with a year-round creek and good grass. The current owner was retiring and moving to California to live with his daughter, and he was willing to sell to Austin on reasonable terms. "I have almost enough saved for the down payment," Austin said as they stood looking out over the valley. "Another 6 months and I can make Henderson an offer." "It is beautiful land," Beatrice said, and it was. She could see cattle grazing here, a house nestled near the creek, children playing in the yard. The images came unbidden, but they did not frighten her as much as they once would have. "I can see our life here," Austin said quietly. "You and me building something together." Beatrice turned to look at him. "You want me to be part of this. I want you to be part of everything. My land, my life, my future." He took both her hands. "I know it has only been a few months, I know you need time, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Beatrice. When you are ready, when you feel safe enough to trust me completely, I want to marry you." Her heart hammered in her chest. This was the moment she had both longed for and dreaded, the moment when she had to decide if she was brave enough to risk everything again. "What if I cannot give you an answer right now? Then I will wait. I told you I am patient. What if I am never ready? Then I will love you anyway for as long as you will let me." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "But I do not think that is what is going to happen. I think you are ready, or close to it. You just need to believe in yourself as much as I believe in you." That night, Beatrice lay in her bed at the boarding house and thought about everything Austin had said. She thought about the land, about the future he was offering. But mostly she thought about the man himself, about his kindness and patience, about the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, about how safe she felt in his arms. Thomas had made her feel inadequate, like she had to earn his love by being someone she was not. Austin made her feel valued exactly as she was. He loved her strength, not despite it but because of it. He did not want to change her or control her. He wanted to stand beside her and build a life together. The realization hit her like lightning. She loved him. She loved Austin Kane with a depth and certainty she had never felt for Thomas. What she had felt for her former fiancé had been infatuation, a surface attraction that had never gone deeper. What she felt for Austin was real and solid and lasting. She loved him, and she was ready to tell him. The next morning, Beatrice took extra care with her appearance. She wore her blue dress again, let Mrs. Cooper fix her hair in that becoming style, even borrowed a bit of rose oil to dab on her wrists. Mrs. Cooper watched with knowing eyes. "You are going to tell him, are you not?" "Tell him what?" "That you love him. It is written all over your face." Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "Am I that obvious?" "Only to someone who has been watching. That boy is head over heels for you, and you are just as far gone for him. It is about time you both admitted it properly." Beatrice drove her wagon out to the Henderson ranch, her stomach fluttering with nerves. She found Austin in the barn, checking on a mare who was close to foaling. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, and his face lit up with that smile that made her heart skip. "Beatrice, I was not expecting you today. I know, I wanted to see you." Something in her tone made him set down the tool he had been holding and give her his full attention. "Is something wrong?" "No, something is very right." She took a deep breath. "I have been thinking about what you said yesterday. About the land, about the future. All right. He waited, those gray eyes patient and encouraging. I was so afraid after Thomas, afraid of being hurt again, of trusting someone and having them betray me. I built walls around my heart and told myself I was better off alone. Beatrice, let me finish. She stepped closer, looking up into his face. You broke through those walls, Austin. You saw past all my defenses and showed me that not all men are like Thomas. You have been patient and kind and honest. You make me feel safe and valued and loved. You are all those things. You always were. I love you. The words came out in a rush, but once they were spoken, she felt a weight lift from her chest. I love you, Austin Kane, and I want to build that future with you. I want to marry you and help you build your ranch and maybe fill that house with children. I want all of it with you. Austin's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: surprise, joy, relief, love. Then he was pulling her into his arms, lifting her off her feet, spinning her in a circle while she laughed and clung to his shoulders. Say it again, he demanded, setting her down but keeping her close. I love you. Again. I love you, Austin. He kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring everything he felt into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this. I promise you, Beatrice, I will be the man you deserve. You already are. They stood in the barn, wrapped in each other's arms, and Beatrice felt something she had not felt in 3 years. She felt whole. The broken pieces of her heart, scattered by Thomas's betrayal, had been gathered up and carefully, tenderly mended by this remarkable man who had shown her what real love looked like. Austin pulled back slightly. We should tell Henderson. He is going to be insufferable with the "I told you so's." He has been predicting this since the day you brought me back half dead. Let him gloat. I do not care. We should also start planning. The wedding, I mean, unless you want a long engagement. Beatrice thought about it. A year ago, she would have wanted time, would have needed proof of his constancy. But she knew Austin now. She trusted him completely. No, I do not want a long engagement, maybe after Christmas. That gives us 2 months to plan. 2 months. Austin's grin was enormous. Mrs. Beatrice Kane. I like the sound of that. So do I. They told Henderson and his wife together. As predicted, Henderson was delighted and claimed full credit for the match. I knew it the moment she brought you home, boy, knew she was special, and I knew you were smart enough to see it too. Mrs. Henderson was more practical. 2 months is not much time to plan a wedding. We will need to order a dress, arrange the church, prepare for guests. Nothing fancy, Beatrice said quickly. Just something simple. I do not need a big celebration. Every bride needs a proper wedding, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. Let me help you, please. I never had daughters and I would love to do this. Beatrice was touched by the offer. Thank you. I would appreciate that. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Beatrice continued her fence work, but now she also spent time with Mrs. Henderson planning the wedding. They ordered a simple but beautiful white dress from the dressmaker in Carson City. They arranged for the ceremony to be held in the small church in Yerington on the Saturday after Christmas. They planned a reception at the Henderson Ranch, where there would be room for all the ranchers and townspeople who wanted to attend. Austin spent every spare moment with Beatrice, and they talked about their future with growing excitement. He had enough saved now for the down payment on the land, and the current owner had agreed to wait until spring for the sale to close. That would give Austin time to finish his commitment to Henderson and begin building a house on his new property. We will live at Henderson's for the first few months, Austin explained. They have offered us the foreman's cabin. It is small but comfortable. Once the house is built on our land, we will move there. Our land, Beatrice repeated, loving the sound of it. Our house, our future. Ours, Austin agreed, kissing her temple. December brought cold weather and occasional snow, but it could not dampen Beatrice's happiness. She had never imagined feeling this way again, this sense of anticipation and joy. Austin was everything she had needed: steady, honest, loving. He treated her like a partner, not a possession. He valued her opinions and respected her work. One evening, as they sat together in the front room of the Henderson house, Austin watching her sew lace onto her wedding dress, he said, "I have been thinking about your fence business. What about it? After we are married, what do you want to do with it? Keep working or focus on the ranch?" It was a fair question, and one Beatrice had been considering. "I like the work. I am good at it, but I also want to help build our ranch, our life together." "What if you kept the business but scaled back? Maybe just took jobs close to our property, or only worked a few days a week? You have built something solid, Beatrice. I do not want you to give it up entirely unless you want to." The fact that he even asked, that he cared about her dreams as much as his own, made her love him even more. "I think that is a good compromise. I can keep my regular clients but limit how much I take on, at least until we have children. And then I will decide based on what our family needs. But I like that you are giving me a choice. You will always have choices with me. I want a partnership, not a dictatorship." The week before the wedding, Beatrice's 2 hired helpers gave her a pair of new wire cutters as a wedding present, the handles engraved with her initials. It was a thoughtful gift from young men who probably spent half their wages on it, and it touched her deeply. "For your continued success," one of them said awkwardly. "You have been good to us, Miss Zimmerman, fair and patient. We wanted you to know we appreciated it." "I will treasure these," Beatrice said, meaning it. Christmas came, and Beatrice spent it with Austin and the Hendersons. It was the first Christmas in years where she felt truly at home, surrounded by people who cared about her. Mrs. Henderson gave her a beautiful quilt for her marriage bed, stitched with intricate patterns. Henderson gave Austin a breeding pair of his best cattle, a start for the young man's own herd. "You have earned this," Henderson said gruffly. "You have worked hard for me for 5 years. This is just a small thank you." Austin's eyes were bright with emotion. "Thank you, sir. You have been like a father to me. And you have been like the son I never had. Take care of that girl. She is special. I know, I will." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold. Beatrice woke early in her room at the boarding house, her stomach full of butterflies. Mrs. Cooper helped her bathe and dress, fixing her hair with careful attention. The white dress fit perfectly, the lace adding an elegant touch. Beatrice looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the radiant woman staring back. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Cooper said, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "That young man is very lucky." "I am the lucky one," Beatrice said softly. The church was packed when Beatrice arrived. It seemed half of Yarrington had turned out for the wedding. She saw ranchers she had worked for, townspeople she had met over the past 3 years, ranch hands from Henderson spread. And standing at the front, looking handsome and nervous in his best suit, was Austin. Their eyes met across the church, and Beatrice felt her nervousness melt away. This was right. This was what she was meant to do where she was meant to be. She walked down the aisle alone, having no family to give her away. But she did not feel alone. She felt surrounded by community, by people who wished her well. And at the end of the aisle stood the man who had mended her broken heart with his tender care and infinite patience. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They spoke traditional vows, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both should live. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Austin kissed her with such gentle reverence that Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you, Mrs. Kane," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too." The reception at the Henderson Ranch was festive and joyful. There was food and music and dancing. Beatrice danced with Austin, with Henderson, with several of the ranch hands who were brave enough to ask. She laughed more than she had in years, her cheeks hurting from smiling. As the evening drew to a close, Austin led her out to the foreman's cabin that would be their home for the next few months. Someone had decorated it with ribbons and flowers, and a fire crackled cheerfully in the fireplace. It was small and simple, but it was theirs. Austin pulled her into his arms, his gray eyes soft with love. "Happy, Mrs. Kane, happier than I ever thought possible." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, and Beatrice felt the last of her old fears dissolve. This was real. This was lasting. This was love as it was meant to be. That night, in the warmth of their marriage bed, Austin was gentle and patient, making sure her first time was everything it should be. Afterward, as she lay in his arms, listening to his steady heartbeat, Beatrice marveled at how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been alone, guarded, convinced she would never trust anyone again. Now she was married to a man she loved deeply, embarking on a new adventure together. The winter months passed quickly. Beatrice continued to work on local fence repairs, though she cut back her hours as she had planned. Austin spent his days at Henderson's ranch, preparing to transition his duties to the new foreman Henderson would hire in the spring. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, planning their future ranch, dreaming of the life they would build. In February, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. She told Austin one evening after supper, nervous about his reaction. They had not planned to start a family quite so soon, wanting to get established first. But the moment she saw the joy on his face, her nervousness vanished. "A baby," he breathed, his hand going to her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy about it?" "Happy." "Beatrice, I am thrilled. Terrified, but thrilled." He pulled her close. "This is even better than I imagined, our own child." "Our own child," she repeated, the reality of it settling in. She was going to be a mother. Austin was going to be a father. Their family was beginning. Spring came, bringing warmer weather and new life. The sale of Austin's land went through, and he took ownership of his dream. They spent weekends at the property, clearing the site for their house, planning where the barn and corrals would go. Henderson gave Austin several more head of cattle, and slowly their herd grew. Building the house became a community effort. The local ranchers, grateful for Beatrice's years of reliable fence work, donated time and materials. Austin's fellow cowboys from Henderson's ranch helped with the construction. By early summer, a sturdy two-story house stood near the creek, with a wide porch and large windows to let in the light. It was not fancy, but it was solid and well-built, a home that would shelter their family for generations. They moved in during July, and Beatrice cried as she stood in the empty front room of their very own house. All the pain and heartbreak that had brought her to Yarrington seemed worth it now, because it had led her here, to this moment, to this life. "You all right?" Austin asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her swollen belly. "I am perfect. This is perfect." Their son was born in early October, delivered by the same Dr. Morrison who had tended Austin's gunshot wound nearly a year and a half earlier. The labor was long and difficult, and Austin paced the porch of their house, wearing a path in the wood while Mrs. Henderson attended Beatrice inside. When he finally heard his son's first cry, Austin burst through the door despite Mrs. Henderson's protests that he should wait. But the older woman just shook her head and smiled as Austin fell to his knees beside the bed where Beatrice lay exhausted and triumphant, their newborn son in her arms. "A boy," she said softly. "We have a son." Austin touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you for this gift." They named him Andrew Kane, after Austin's grandfather who had been the only kind person in his childhood. The baby had his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination, making his preferences known from day one. With a healthy set of lungs, life settled into a new rhythm. Austin worked his ranch, slowly building his herd and reputation as a fair and honest rancher. Beatrice scaled back her fence work even more, taking only occasional jobs from neighbors, focusing instead on their home and their son. She discovered she loved motherhood, loved watching Andrew grow and change, loved seeing Austin's gentleness with their child. In the evenings after Andrew was asleep, they would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over their land, counting their blessings. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if Thomas had not betrayed you?" Austin asked one night. Beatrice considered the question. "Sometimes, but not with regret, if that is what you are asking. If he had been faithful, I would have married him and been miserable. I would never have come to Yarrington, never would have met you, never would have had all of this." She gestured to encompass their house, their land, their life. "So, in a way, you owe him." "I owe him nothing. But I suppose I should thank him for showing me his true character before I made an even bigger mistake." She leaned her head on Austin's shoulder. "Everything I went through, all the pain and heartbreak, it led me here, to you. And I would go through it all again if this is where I ended up." Austin kissed the top of her head. "You are the strongest woman I know. You took something broken and mended it, made it better than it was before." "We mended each other," Beatrice corrected. "You showed me that love does not have to hurt, that a man can be kind and patient and true to his word. You gave me back my ability to trust. And you gave me a home, not just a house, but a real home filled with love and laughter. A family. Everything I dreamed about when I was a kid sleeping in the bunkhouse, everything I hoped for but was not sure I deserved. You deserve it all. You deserve everything good." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged overhead, the sound of the creek providing a gentle backdrop. Andrew stirred in his cradle inside, making the little snuffling sounds of a baby dreaming, and Beatrice felt her heart swell with contentment. The years rolled on, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Their herd grew steadily. Austin's reputation as a skilled cattleman spread throughout the region, and he was often asked for advice by other ranchers. Beatrice maintained a small fence business, working only for neighbors and friends, enjoying the physical labor and the satisfaction of her craft. When Andrew was 3, they had a daughter, Emma, who had her mother's dark blonde hair and her father's easy smile. 2 years after that came another son, Benjamin, who was quiet and thoughtful from infancy. Their house rang with children's laughter, with the sounds of a family growing and thriving. Austin built additions to the house as needed, adding bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Beatrice planted a garden and fruit trees. They acquired chickens and pigs, a milk cow, a barn cat who kept the mice at bay. Their ranch became a real homestead, a place of productivity and life. Through it all, Austin and Beatrice remained deeply in love. They still sat together on the porch in the evenings when the children were asleep, still talked about their dreams and hopes. They weathered difficult times together: a hard winter that killed several head of cattle, a summer drought that tested their resolve, childhood illnesses that terrified them both. But they faced everything as partners, supporting each other, never letting the challenges drive them apart. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin took Beatrice back to the spot by the creek where they had first picnicked, where he had first told her he loved her. The children were spending the day with the Hendersons, giving them rare time alone. "You remember that day?" Austin asked, spreading the same blanket they had used a decade earlier. "Of course I do. You told me you were falling in love with me and I was terrified. You are not terrified anymore, I hope. Beatrice smiled. No, now I just love you, simply and completely without any fear. Austin pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a wire fence, the tiny wires forming a heart. I had it made special, he explained as Beatrice examined it with wonder. Because you mend fences, but you also mended my heart. You made me believe in love and family, in a future worth working for. Tears streamed down Beatrice's face as she let him fasten the necklace around her throat. It is beautiful. You are beautiful. Our life is beautiful. Happy anniversary, Beatrice. Happy anniversary. They made love there by the creek, in the place where their romance had truly begun, and it was every bit as passionate and tender as their first time together. Afterward, lying in Austin's arms under the cottonwood trees, Beatrice reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had come to Yarrington broken and alone, determined never to trust again. She had chosen to mend fences because she was good at fixing things, never realizing that the thing most in need of mending was her own heart. And then Austin Kane had ridden into her life, bleeding and in need of help, and everything had changed. He had been patient when she needed patience, understanding when she needed understanding. He had shown her through his actions, not just his words, that he was worthy of her trust. He had proven day after day, year after year, that real love was not about grand gestures but about steady devotion, about choosing each other every single day. "What are you thinking about?" Austin asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "About how lucky I am. About how wrong I was to think I could never trust again. You were not wrong. You were hurt and protecting yourself. That is natural. But I could have missed all of this if I had not taken a chance on you. You would never have missed it. I would have kept trying until you said yes." "I am nothing if not stubborn," Beatrice laughed. "Yes, you are. Thank goodness for that." They returned home as the sun was setting to find their children had arrived back from the Hendersons. Andrew, now 12, had inherited his father's love of ranching and spent every spare moment learning about cattle and horses. Emma, 9, was bright and curious, always asking questions about everything. Benjamin, 7, had his mother's practical nature and was already showing an aptitude for building and fixing things. The family gathered for dinner, the children chattering about their day while Austin and Beatrice exchanged contented glances. This was what happiness looked like, not a perfect life without problems, but a life filled with love and laughter, with people who mattered. After the children were in bed, Austin and Beatrice sat on their porch, as they had done countless times before. The night was clear and cool, the stars brilliant overhead. "I have been thinking about expanding the herd next spring," Austin said. "We have the grazing capacity for it, and the market is good." "That sounds wise. We could also think about adding more fencing on the north pasture." "I could do the work myself, save hiring someone. Only if you want to. You do not have to work, Beatrice." "I know I do not have to, but I like it. I like using my hands, like creating something functional and lasting." She smiled. "Besides, someone has to keep their skills sharp in case any local cowboys get themselves shot and need rescuing." Austin laughed. "That happened exactly once, and I am never living it down, am I? Never. It is how we met. I am allowed to tease you about it. Fair enough." He pulled her close. "I love you, Beatrice Kane, more today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." "That is impossibly romantic. I learned from the best." Years continued to pass, bringing more changes. The children grew into capable, kind young adults. Andrew took over more responsibilities on the ranch, working side by side with his father. Emma decided she wanted to be a teacher and began training at the new school in Yarrington. Benjamin, to no one's surprise, became an apprentice carpenter and started building furniture in his spare time. Henderson passed away when Austin was 38, leaving the ranch to a nephew from back east. Mrs. Henderson came to live with Austin and Beatrice, occupying the small addition they built for her. She remained with them until her own death 5 years later, surrounded by the family she had helped bring together. Austin and Beatrice's ranch prospered beyond their early dreams. They became pillars of the community, known for their fairness and generosity. When drought struck the region, they shared water from their creek with struggling neighbors. When a ranch hand was injured, they paid for his medical care. They raised their children to value hard work and compassion, to treat others with respect regardless of their station. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children organized a celebration that brought together ranchers and townspeople from throughout the region. There were speeches praising Austin's skill as a cattleman and Beatrice's reputation as the best fence mender in Nevada. There was dancing and food and laughter late into the night. But the moment Beatrice cherished most came at the end of the evening, when Austin took her hand and led her away from the party, out to the porch of their house, where they could be alone under the stars. 25 years, he said softly. Half my life spent with you. And what do you have to show for it? Beatrice teased gently. Austin gestured to encompass everything around them, the house they had built together, the land they had nurtured, the children who were their legacy. Everything that matters. You gave me everything that matters, Beatrice. We built it together. That is the important part, not you, not me, but us. Us, Austin agreed. The best partnership I could have imagined. He kissed her there on the porch, the same porch where they had shared thousands of kisses over the years, and it was every bit as sweet as their first. The years had added lines to both their faces, silver to Austin's hair and Beatrice's temples, but the love between them had only grown stronger and deeper. I need to tell you something, Beatrice said when they parted. All right. I have been thinking about Thomas lately. About what happened all those years ago in Colorado. Austin stiffened slightly. Why? Because I realized something. For a long time, I thought of that betrayal as the worst thing that ever happened to me, the most painful experience of my life. It was a terrible thing he did to you. Yes, it was. But it was also the best thing that could have happened because it sent me on the path that led to you. She took his face in her hands. If he had not shown his true character, I would have married him and been trapped in a loveless marriage. I never would have come to Yarrington. Never would have been mending that fence on the day you got shot. Never would have met you or fallen in love with you or built this incredible life with you. So you are saying you are grateful to him. I am saying I am grateful for the journey, even the painful parts, because it led me here. To this moment, to you. Austin's eyes were bright with emotion. I love you so much, Beatrice Kane. I love you too, Austin Kane, always and forever. They stood together on their porch, holding each other as they had done countless times before. Two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. Beatrice had come to Nevada territory broken and alone, determined to mend fences and avoid heartache. Instead, she had found a cowboy who had mended her broken heart with tender care, who had shown her that real love was not about perfection, but about partnership, commitment, and choosing each other every single day. Their life together had not been without challenges. There had been hard times, disappointments, losses. But through it all they had held onto each other, had faced every obstacle together. And in doing so, they had built something lasting and true, a marriage that had stood the test of time, a family that would carry on their legacy, a love that would endure. As they stood there under the stars, Austin whispered, Thank you for taking a chance on me all those years ago. Thank you for being patient while I found my courage. I would have waited forever. I know. That is why I love you." Inside the house, they could hear their children laughing together, could hear the sounds of family and home and life. Outside, the land they had worked so hard to build stretched around them, fertile and productive. And in each other's arms, they had everything they needed. The years continued their steady march. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with new energy and laughter. Andrew married a local rancher's daughter and built his own house on the far edge of their property, keeping the ranch in the family. Emma became the head teacher at the Yarrington School and married a gentle banker from Carson City. Benjamin opened his own carpentry business, creating beautiful furniture sought after throughout the region. Austin and Beatrice gradually eased into retirement, handing over more responsibilities to Andrew while they enjoyed their later years. They took up new hobbies. Beatrice learned to paint, capturing the Nevada landscape in watercolors, while Austin wrote down stories of the old days for his grandchildren. But some things never changed. They still sat together on their porch every evening, weather permitted, still held hands as they watched the sunset, still told each other, "I love you," every single day. The wire fence pendant had become Beatrice's most treasured possession, never removed from around her neck. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. There were children and grandchildren, old friends from across the region, even a few folks who had come all the way from Texas to honor Austin. The gathering was huge and festive, a testament to the lives they had lived and the impact they had made. That evening, after the guests had departed and the family had gone to bed, Austin and Beatrice returned to their favorite spot on the porch. They moved slower now, their joints stiff with age, but they still made it there together just as they always had. 50 years, Beatrice marveled. How did it go by so fast? Because we were happy. Happy years always pass too quickly. You have any regrets? Austin considered the question seriously. Only that I did not have more time. If I could live it all again exactly the same way, I would in a heartbeat. Even the getting shot part, especially that part, it brought you into my life. Beatrice leaned her head on his shoulder just as she had done thousands of times before. We built something good here, you and I. We built something great, a family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us both. Our children and grandchildren will carry it forward. They will. We taught them well. They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the night around them, crickets chirping, the creek babbling, an owl hooting in the distance. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of their love story so many years ago. Beatrice? Yes, thank you. For what? For everything. For saving my life that day. For taking a chance on me. For building this life with me. For loving me all these years. For being my partner, my love, my best friend. Beatrice lifted her head to look at him, seeing the face she had loved for 50 years, now lined and weathered but still beautiful to her. You are welcome, but you should thank yourself too. You did the hardest thing. You mended my broken heart with your tender care and patience. You gave me back the ability to trust, to love, to hope. You showed me what a real man, a good man, looks like. We were both broken when we met. We healed each other. Yes, we did. Austin kissed her softly, a gentle press of lips that still made her heart flutter. I love you, Mrs. Kane. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Mr. Kane, always and forever. They stayed on the porch until late, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment. Finally, they made their way inside to bed, climbing the stairs slowly but together, always together. The years had been kind to them, granting them long lives filled with purpose and love. When Austin passed away peacefully in his sleep at 82, with Beatrice holding his hand, it was with the knowledge that he had lived a full and meaningful life. He had achieved every dream he had set out to accomplish, owned his own ranch, raised a good family, and spent 53 years married to the woman he loved. Beatrice grieved deeply, but took comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the legacy they had built together. She lived another 5 years, spending her days painting and telling stories of the old days to her great-grandchildren. She never remarried, saying that she had already had the love of her lifetime and needed no other. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through the generations just as Austin had hoped. The house he and Beatrice built remained standing for over 100 years, a testament to solid construction and loving care. Their story became a family legend, told and retold to each new generation, the story of a woman who mended fences for a living and a cowboy who mended her broken heart with tender care. In the small cemetery outside Yarrington, their graves lie side by side under a cottonwood tree, a wire fence enclosing the plot. The inscription on their shared headstone reads simply, "Austin and Beatrice Kane. Together they built a life of love." And in the end, that was what mattered most, not the land they had owned or the money they had made, but the love they had shared, the family they had raised, and the example they had set. They had taken broken pieces and mended them into something whole and beautiful and lasting. They had proven that heartbreak does not have to be permanent, that trust can be rebuilt, and that real love, patient and tender and true, can heal even the deepest wounds. Their story lived on in their descendants, in the ranch that still bore their name, in the values they had instilled that were passed down through the generations. And somewhere in the Nevada wind that swept across those hills and valleys, you could still feel the echo of their love, enduring, unchanging, eternal.